Hello. Been working a lot lately with the Raspberry Pi, little mini computers that are inexpensive and a great tool to teach programming for students. They're a lot of fun to play with. But getting started with them, I've found there's just not a lot of consistent documentation on how to set them up, get them out of the box, get them ready to go, get them ready to program. There's a lot of this geeky stuff, there's this underlying assumption that you're already a geek, so it's real easy to, you just take it out and you just do stuff and it works. And I'm finding there was a lot of missing information, so what I thought I'd do is provide for you a little bit of a walkthrough on the first steps to get the system set up and ready to go. Today I'll be working with a Raspberry Pi 2. They just recently came out and they're a faster, better processor, more memory than the original Raspberry, so I'm super excited about it. I've played with them a little bit. They're noticeably, I read an article that said they're 6 times faster than the original Raspberry, and you really notice the difference. So the kit I'm working with today is a Cana kit. And they do a really nice job of putting together a little kit that has some good get you started stuff. Not super fancy, but to kind of get you out of the box and ready to go. I just looked on Amazon and I found them anywhere from about $70 to $80, which considering the Raspberry Pi itself is supposed to retail for about $35, really super good deal. So I thought I'd give you the true out-of-the-box experience. So I'm going to take my sharp object here and open up the box and take a quick peek at what's inside, and then we'll move on to assembly and then talk you through some of the basic steps that it's going to take to get it ready to go. So inside the box we've got an HDMI cable, which is handy dandy. On these little computers, the output, the monitor for them uses an HDMI, which is great because any TV will work. A lot of newer computer monitors have HDMI out, and there are adapters available to go from HDMI to VGA. So that's already provided for you, handy dandy. There's little bits and pieces that we have to start doing our programming and working with components, because these allow us to interact with electronic components. There's a piece called a breadboard, which is how we create basic circuits and plug things in real simply. So set that out. And you get a little bag of electronic goodies. So some resistors, some LEDs, and some push buttons to kind of get you started on some basic programming. Really fun. You can add more stuff later. And like this little breadboard's good to get started with, but it's kind of tiny, so it won't be long you'll want a better one. But it's handy. You can use more than one breadboard. You're thinking, what's a breadboard? Yeah, we'll get to that down the road. Another big chunk of stuff we get is a bunch of little patch cables to connect our Raspberry Pi outputs and inputs into the breadboard and to the different components. So that's handy dandy and ready to go. Then we get, more boring stuff. There's a power supply. What's great about these little computers is they use what is essentially a cell phone charger. So it's got a micro USB connector on it. It looks an awful lot like a cell phone charger, which you could probably use it to charge your phone if it's not an Apple device. But ready to go. That's in the box. And let's see, little stuff. We have a Wi-Fi adapter, which is handy dandy. I'm going to use, to get started, and I recommend you do the same thing. To get started out of the box, we're going to use an Ethernet cable and plug it in directly to the wall or into your router at home. So that's how we'll get started. But down the road we can move to installing the Wi-Fi card, and then we don't need to have it tethered to the wall with Ethernet. So really cool that they included that in the kit. There's a little case, easy open case, a box that contains our little computer. And it's super easy to get out of the box, but it's a little clear plastic housing. So that's ready to go. It pops apart, it snaps around our Raspberry Pi down the road. So we'll set that aside. We're just going to put this little fella together. Another small item that comes in the box, absolutely no instructions, are two small heat sinks. And these heat sinks help dissipate the heat from the graphics chip and the main microprocessor chip on the board. There's a HandyDandy included instruction kit set that actually tells you next to nothing, which is one reason I made this video, just to help you out a little bit. So we'll set that nearby, maybe open it up. And everyone should have a small Swiss Army knife. That's, included in your stuff that you need to get. Everybody's got to have one. So let's open up the computer itself. Yeah, really. The computer itself is in this tiny little box. It's amazing. So we'll pop him out of there. And in the pink envelope is the micro SD card. And that's essentially equivalent to the hard drive of the computer. So that's where the operating system is going to be located in all our files. So I'm going to open up that little container and pop out the micro SD card. And it's about the size of your fingernail and is capable of holding, I believe, 8 gigabytes of data, which is pretty phenomenal. Lastly, the meat of the matter is our handy-dandy Raspberry Pi logic board. This is an entire computer. No way. Yes way. It's an entire computer. It's basically a computer on a chip. So the Broadcom folks make a ARM microprocessor that is the entire brains of the operation. There's another chip here that I believe is graphics, not sure. So there's that guy. Can you see it? It's an amazing little critter. This new Raspberry Pi 2 has 4 USB ports as opposed to the 2 that were on the original. So I really like that we have more USB. It didn't take long to run out of USB ports on this thing. It has a sound out that can also, I believe, double as a video out. I haven't played with that. And your HDMI port and a power port. There's a couple of slots on here that you can connect a Raspberry Pi camera to, and another, like a display device, like a little LCD camera that are LCD screen. Those are available with different sources. And there's a row of input-output pins that we'll be using to do our programming with. So those are handy-dandy. Okay, so we've got the little guy out of the box. Oh, also you get these neat little cards that show, really handy, they show the input-output pins on your computer. And then boy, this would have helped me out, a resistor color chart. As we get further into this, we'll use resistors, and resistors are coded by the colored bands that are on them, and we'll need to learn to identify them. So it's really handy of them to include those cards in the kit. So I'm going to get my Raspberry Pi ready to connect into the case. First thing I'll do is attach the little heat sinks to the processor chips. So I'm going to peel off this little layer of protective backing on this adhesive eventually. Yes, there we go. And I'm going to carefully seat it onto the chip. So it's pretty straight and covers the entire chip as well as possible. Press it down kind of firmly. And it scooches around a little bit. It really doesn't matter which direction you make the little fins go. They're square, so it could go either way. Again, using my handy-dandy Swiss Army knife to attempt to peel the tape off. Attempting to peel the tape off now as we speak. There we go. And that goes on this small chip near the USB ports. So I'll stick that on there, and I'll be all neat and organized and make the fins go the same direction. Push that down so it's well seated. Now we've got some cooling put in. So then the board goes into the base of the mount. And there are, you need to line up the appropriate ports The SD card goes out of the bottom here, the hard drive, so to speak, of the device. And there's a slot in the bottom that is designed to accommodate that card. So we'll make sure we put our device in so that SD card slot is visible through there. Awesome. Then we just snap the top on. There's a big slot here for what's called the GPIO ports, which are these pins on here. That's general purpose input-output. And that's how we get data, I guess, into and out of the Raspberry Pi to work with our electronics. So I'm going to snap that case together. And it goes ker-snap. And it's got the slot for the GPIO, for the external monitor, for the camera add-on, which is about a $25 part. So all that stuff's ready to go. There's your slots. GPIO, USB, and Ether. So that's all ready to go. Here's our HDMI. So we're kind of looking like we might be getting close to ready to fire this little guy up. So the first thing we're going to have to do is give it some memory, give it a hard drive to work with. And I'm kind of air quoting the hard drive thing. This is a solid state storage device, so it's not like a conventional hard drive that spins. It's just electronic. So I place the card in the slots with the copper pins to the top of the device, push it in, and it will snap to click. If I want to remove it, I just push down and it ejects it. So if I push in, it should snap and seat into the receiver for the card. So that's good to go. Then the next step I'm going to do is plug in the Ethernet cable. I guess it doesn't really have to occur in this order, but I'm going to plug in Ethernet because we'll take a wee break here and then hook up so I can show you what you'll see on screen as you fire up your computer. But first we'll get everything ready to go, and then you'll be able to see what you would see on your screen once we start up this device. Next step, I'm going to plug in a standard keyboard. This is just any keyboard you have laying around that's USB. So it's got the USB connector on it. This happens to be an HP keyboard. And any keyboard you have laying around will work. So I'm going to go ahead and plug it into the USB ports. I have a USB optical mouse. I'm going to plug it in. The system, as we install it, will detect these devices, but we're going to have to do a little bit of tweaking once we get the computer up and running. So that's basically ready to go. If you were hooking it up to a TV, which we sort of will be doing here in a bit, we'll unfurl our HDMI cable, taking off the infernal twist ties, pull the little safety covers off, and it goes on this side of the device next to the power supply. So I'm going to plug it in there, wiggle it in until it's nice and firm, and then this end would go to a computer monitor or a TV HDMI input. So that's all ready to go. And then the last piece we will need is our HandyDandy cell phone type power supply. And it will go into power. And the last phase of our operation would be then to plug it in next to the HDMI cable, having the proper polarity. They're kind of shaped in a D shape, so they'll only go in one direction. And if the gods are smiling, we should see some lights light up. And it may not because we don't have an HDMI monitor hooked up to it. So that gets us to the point where we're just about ready to go. Later on, we'll talk more about connecting to the breadboard and actually doing some wiring. But I wanted to get you guys ready to get this thing out of the box, take care of some basic programming, install the operating system, and kind of be ready to go. And then when we are ready to go, we can use this breadboard connector to make it easier to plug in pins to our breadboard. This will connect our Raspberry Pi to the breadboard, and then we can plug our components into it. So that'll be a kind of another phase of this project. So for now, I think we're ready to go. I'm going to show you what this looks like connected to a monitor and then walk you through the steps that you need to go through to make sure everything works just the way we want it.